All right, Esther chapter 1. Let's call this one Look at Me as we begin looking at King Ahasuerus of Persia, presumably the same Ahasuerus we saw in Ezra chapter 4, caught between the people of the land and the exiles from Israel who are returning to Israel. There are a number of kings caught up in that dispute, and he is one of them, even though he is mentioned briefly there. He is now the focus of attention in chapter 1, and that's what he wants, because early on it shows that in his third year he's throwing a huge party to show off his royal splendor for roughly 6 months. It's going to say 180 days, and he doesn't seem to be just a show off, because when he throws the party, it's going to say he throws it for both people great and small, meaning he's considerate of all those who might want to attend and share in the festivities. And he's not just inviting them to come, he's being generous, making sure they're all provided for. And he is issuing an order regarding the drink, and that order is no compulsion. So he looks to be a relatively generous man, considerate of both the high and the low. But at the end of the 180 days, it's going to seem like he does not want the party to end, because he's going to throw a feast for another 7 days. And at the end of that 7 days, that's when the trouble is going to start, because he is going to look for yet another way to show off when he says, my wife's real pretty. And he is going to tell some of his servants to bring in Queen Vashti, his wife, so that everybody can see her with her royal crown in all of her beauty. But she is not going to seem to be super impressed at the thought of being one more thing for King Ahasuerus to show off so that everybody can look at me. And so she's going to say no, and that's going to set off a round of retaliation in which he is going to be incensed. He's embarrassed in front of his friends, wife saying no. But like we said, he's not a completely bad guy. He didn't fly off the handle right away. He calls in his friends to help him decide how to appropriately fly off the handle in retaliation against Vashti saying no. But after he gets his friends together, they're not going to seem to be much less myopic or self-interested than he does, because their advice is going to be rooted in how this is going to affect their households, saying, look, this is bigger than Queen Vashti, because we got wives too. And when they hear what she did, guess what home life's going to look like for me? And so look at me seems to be the driving force behind a lot of the conflict that will not only follow in this chapter, but throughout the book of Esther, because as much of a fail as this looks like in chapter 1, it's actually going to open the door for resolving a much larger problem that's going to develop by the time we get to chapter 3. However, a few things caught my attention from this chapter. First of all, being the 7th day, which reminded me of something I heard that goes something like, most accidents happen within 5 minutes or 5 miles of home, depending upon who you ask. I tried to fact check it, couldn't find out how true it is, but it is something I've heard before, because it's been bandied about to help us understand that no matter how long a journey you're on, you're not there until you're actually there. And sometimes being close to home can cause you to drop your guard in a situation that is still dangerous. And Ahasuerus got caught up on the 7th day, or the last day of a feast that went 180 days plus the 7-day feast. And so he was still in a position where he needed his judgment at his best, but it seems like he poured too much alcohol on the need for too much attention, which ended up getting him the second thing that caught my attention, and that is 4 years, which is roughly the period of time it took him to find a new wife, which brought me to another realization, which is kind of something we've mentioned before, and that is the whole concept of, look, one person's freedom is another person's tyranny, and freedom unchecked often turns out to be exactly that. See, because even though he issued an official order saying there is no compulsion, at least with regard to the drinking, that is an interesting irony to the fact that he literally compelled his own wife to show up and just show off. It makes me think back to Samson, not really thinking long range about the effects that his gambling would have on his wife's family. And so when Samson won a bet against her people, the Philistines, she actually took the loss. And beyond Samson, Pharaoh, during the period of the Exodus, had a level of freedom that proved to be tyranny for Israel. Likewise, King Saul had a level of freedom that proved to be tyranny for David, his successor. Beyond that, Ahab enjoyed a level of freedom that proved to be tyranny for his neighbor Naboth, who he eventually had killed, even if it was indirectly. He had him killed for that vineyard. And beyond that, the reason that the people of Israel got to take over the land of Canaan in the first place was that the freedom the Canaanites enjoyed ended up being tyranny for their own children. Some they sacrificed in the fire, and some of their young women they forced into ritual or temple prostitution. And so understand how this first chapter of Esther is giving us another look at how freedom without integrity over and over produces tyranny. So likewise here, Ahasuerus, in seeking a personal win, actually cost his wife the loss. But it wasn't just his wife who lost out in the exchange. He hurt himself, because even though I can't speak for you, I don't know a whole lot of people who have a harem to rely on while they spend 4 years trying to find a new wife based upon a mistake they made on the last night of a party. So if there's nothing else that we can learn from King Ahasuerus, once again, it's that whole concept of completeness, because no matter how generous he was, no matter how considerate he was to all of the people around him, no matter how much he was willing to listen to his counselors, it didn't matter if he did not show that same attention and care to his own wife. And so in our lives, it might not be a spouse, but that whole concept of completeness helps us to understand the ways in which inattention to detail can harm the people around us as we ultimately progress to making decisions that are self-destructive.